Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last episode of the Society of the Eternal Mild podcast for 2017. I'm your host, Noah Sias. On today's episode, we're joined by Jared Christianson of the band Archaic. Make sure you're following the show on all social media at SOTEM Podcast. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you listen on. Don't forget about the show's Patreon at patreon.com/SOTEM Podcast. And lastly, feel free to leave a review or a comment on whatever platform you listen on. So with this episode airing on Christmas Day, hope everyone's had an enjoyable holiday season. As a holiday present to all of you, I thought I'd run some numbers by you. So the show has been running now for 13 weeks, and we've had 12 full episodes with that and one preview show. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I have not put any sort of money into advertising or boosting the show. It's all been word of mouth. And as of the time of this episode, I'm absolutely floored at the fact that between YouTube plays and podcast downloads, that the show has hit 1,200 plays. I really can't say it enough, but thank you so much for helping build this show with me. It means a lot to have this underground following and also have people getting into the show in a big way. Lots of great stuff coming for 2018. So as always, just make sure that you're following the show on social media and subscribed in whatever listening environment that you listen to the show in. So let's get started with this last episode for 2017. My first interaction with Jared was on the Lucid Revolution tour with Archaic, Bermuda, and Inanimate Existence. As stated on a previous episode, that run was a little bit of an awkward one for us, being the odd band out. Along with quite a few shot shows and some really shifty promoters, it wasn't the greatest environment for bonding with the rest of the tour package. I actually haven't had much of a conversation with Jared at all, and we haven't crossed paths since that run. I figured this would be a great way for us to get acquainted with one another and talk some shop. Archaic has definitely been making some moves since that run, and they just put out a new record a couple months ago. So here's my conversation with Jared Christianson. Jared, welcome to the show.
Hey Noah, thanks for having me.
When did you first get involved with music?
Kind of always liked music. When I was in elementary school, I think it was third grade, I got my first guitar. And it was like just a little Strat, like the cheap starter pack Strat that everybody gets for total guitar thing. And then I took lessons a little bit in elementary school, like when I was in 4th and 5th grade. They're just kind of real basic lessons. And then middle school, I kind of got into guitar, then kind of like stopped for a little bit and got back into it. And got like a new guitar teacher. And I think I did lessons up until high school, or maybe right before high school. So most of middle school, I took guitar lessons. And so that's kind of how I got into playing music. I've always kind of liked playing the whole, like, making music more than just listening to it. So I had like bands that I was into, but I really just wanted to like play.
Who were some of your early influences?
I guess what really kind of hooked me was like the Deftones. And I think it was like 6th and 7th grade. That's what really got me like emotionally dedicated to music and like, oh, there's something here that I can relate to.
Were you a part of the whole like MTV numetal hype?
Yeah, like, so it was like Deftones was like my first favorite kind of heavy band. I don't really know, like Green Day. I liked Green Day, and then I liked NoFX. My cousin got me into NoFX, and showed me like the world of punk rock and going to shows. And I think that was all around when I was kind of in middle school, and I was like, oh, I play guitar, maybe this is something I can do. And so I had like my first phase was a punk rock phase. And then in middle school, I met Chance, who is the other founding member of Archaic. and he also played guitar. There's a funny memory from the first time I met him. I was in 6th grade and he was in 7th grade, and we were out at PE class, and it was right when like the school year starts and you don't know anybody and you're kind of scouting around to see who you can maybe get along with. And I just have this one memory. I saw Chance running. We were playing kickball out on the baseball field, and I saw this guy just running as fast as he can to home plate. And when he gets to home plate, he does like this front flip type thing, but totally lands on his like back and ass and like slides. And then the PE teacher's like, Chance Strickland, you need to cut that out and stuff. And it was just like the goofiest thing. I was like, all right, this guy, we're going to be friends. That's kind of how I really got into music, is I found somebody else who was into it, maybe even more into it than I was. And we'd get together and start playing guitar and kind of sharing music and stuff. But funny thing is, our moms actually knew each other from way back in the day in a Mommy and Me program. So we had met beforehand as like really, really young, like babies, basically. And then we ended up by chance meeting in middle school, started playing guitar together, and yeah, that's basically how I got into actually performing and playing music.
So I had no idea that Archaic had been around since 2004, which is absolutely crazy to me. But before we talk about that, let's talk about any early bands or side projects you've been involved with.
Okay, I guess technically, now that I think about it, I was going to say Archaic's been my early band. That was kind of the first band I started. But really, there was my other friend. I think I was in 5th grade. His name was Dustin, and he played drums and I played guitar. And we never actually made it. Like, I think we jammed together once or twice. We never actually made any songs or anything. But we did come up with a band name. And the name we came up with was Acid. And I remember like we burnt it into a piece of wood, like acid. Like, this is our band name because it's like corrosive or whatever. I don't know, that we didn't know it was a drug. And then we went to our parents and we're like, Mom, Dad, we came up with a band name. It's Acid. And they're like, okay. And I was way too young to understand it, but that was like, not even really a band, but that was the first thing. And then when I met Chance, we jammed in middle school, and we weren't really that good either. We weren't like trying to get really good at guitar. We just wanted to rock out. A lot of times we'd just rock out to music, and we'd like mime playing on our guitars. And we both got into Korn real big, and Limp Bizkit, Deftones, that kind of nu metal phase. So we both got 7-string guitars, and we'd just be like rocking out on our 7 strings. And eventually, so Chance went to high school, and he was a year older than me. So we kind of went our separate ways for a little bit. And then the next year when I got into high school, we kind of met back up again. And he told me he knew a friend that wanted to play drums and that we should get together and like jam. That was maybe like 2003. And then in 2004, we decided to actually like make a band. So we're like coming up with band names, and Chance's friend, Matt, which is our first drummer, he wasn't like all about, like, he just had enough money to buy a drum set and was like, I like Slayer, so let's jam. And so we got together in his garage, kind of jammed out, and then we're like, all right, let's start a band. And yeah, so we're coming up with band names, and we were thinking of like what bands we like. And I remember the way Archaic came about was we were like in the kitchen, and Chance's mom was also in there, and she was listening to us come up with names, and she's like, what's a band that you like their name kind of? And we're like Darkane, because there's a Swedish band Darkane that we were all into. And she's like, what about Archaic. And we're like, no, I don't know. And she's like, what about Archaic? And so I think it was Chance's mom that actually like came up, like said the name, and we're like, yeah, I think let's look that up. And it meant ancient and like no longer in use kind of thing. So I guess that's how it happened. It wasn't like a really like thought out thing, but we just started using it. And that was 2004 when we kind of started the band. We recorded our first demo in Lake Elsinore, California, in Southern California, in this guy's living room. And some of it was, I think, even improvised. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. We still have that demo too. I was listening to it like a couple months ago when I was like trying to dig up old demos. But yeah, that's kind of how that started.
It's always a trip to pull up like that really old stuff, and like it's funny when it's like, man, this is total shit.
Oh yeah.
But it's even funnier when you're like, man, this is sick.
Yeah, like that. Okay, that was like you're on the right track. Like I that's not a bad riff right there or something like that. Like occasionally listen to it, like, oh, okay. Like we just were no way like this was, I think, kind of pre-technical death metal. Too, we were more into the Swedish thrash and like American thrash metal and stuff like that. And then really quickly we got a huge dose of like all of the best underground death metal, because a friend of ours, older brother, was in a band called Thrones of Scorn, and they had this 2-song demo that we'd listen to over and over all the time, and we're like, fuck, this stuff is badass. And he actually had this encyclopedia of metal, and we'd go over there, and or it was like Chance's friend, he'd go over there, and then they'd like sneak into his older brother's room and like steal some CDs out of his big old collection and then burn them and like put them back and hope he didn't notice. So we got Cryptopsy and Opeth and Dying Fetus and Suffocation and Nile, mainly like those kind of bands early on when we were in high school. And like the more popular thing was like screamo, and it was when deathcore just started coming out, and we were like, no breakdowns for us, like that's not real metal, this is real metal. Kind of Nazis like that about it. It's kind of funny.
Nice. I can remember around that same time when, it was like, cool, deathcore, metalcore is a thing. And then for me, and it'll probably be funny for you being from California, but me being way out here in the Midwest, I remember I went on to, oh God, here we go. I'm going to show our age right now. Pure Volume.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember I was looking up just like metal bands. Like, I want to hear some like new bands. And I was looking around, and there was this band that was kind of up there. They weren't like on the top of the list or anything, but I clicked on it and I played it, and I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, there's some interesting guitar work. They have a lot of like layered sounds and like cool shit. The Faceless.
Oh, really?
Like that OG lineup, Faceless.
Yeah. See, I didn't even know about the Faceless for a long time, or like they weren't in the batch of music that we got around that time. I think that was, let's see, because we kind of started getting more into death metal around 2003, 2004 when we started. And when do you think that came out? Was that around then, or was that later?
I want to say I was like a freshman in high school, and I think that would have been like 04, maybe 05, but I want to say it was 04.
Yeah, that's funny, man.
You think of all those old websites, and it's like, yeah, they had a lot of bands that, were huge, or some of them are still around, but it's like, man, the Faceless, that's a household name. Even if you hate them, you know who the Faceless are.
Yeah, for sure. Archaic
has 6 releases out, which again is crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. You have 2006's The Divine Manifestation, 2007's Existential Chaos, 2010's Reflections with Dissonance, 2012's Metamorphignition, 2015's Lucid Dawn, and 2017's Nemethia. Let's talk about your most recent release. I listened to that a couple days ago, and I gotta say, I dig it, man. Like, it's sick.
Thanks, man.
It has all the technical aspects that I would expect from you guys, but there's quite a few groove elements this time around that I really enjoy. And I'm not used to hearing that from you guys. It was just sick.
The last album was, I think, a little bit more groove factor. And this one, I feel like, is just like way more musical and complex. And that's due to Greg wrote almost all of the new album, with the exception of some riffs here and there, and some stuff that our old bassist Ivan wrote. But the new album was mostly Greg's like kind of masterwork. He was trying to be like, put his stamp on the music and still keep it archaic. Greg's was raised around music. His dad plays in the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
He's the principal bassoonist there. And Greg was classical violin most of his life too.
I get you.
So he's got the orchestral music kind of stuff like in his blood, and I think that carries that over into everything that he does.
Absolutely. Boy, sounds like I should have him on the show.
I think you should.
Who did you guys go through for production?
We went to Zach Oren in Oakland at the studio that he records in now is called Sharkbite Studios. Same facility that he used to record in, which he called Castle Ultimate Studios back in the day, where we recorded Metamorph Ignition. And that was the first time we met Zach. Obviously, he's done a ton of technical death metal from all the bands in California that we like: Decrepit Birth, Severed Savior, Fallujah, All Shall Perish. He was the man to go to in our area. So we went there in 2012, and we just had such a fantastic experience that we were like, I see why this is the guy to go to for this style of music. And so we went there for Lucid Dawn, our previous album, and then we went back to him for Nemethia, for the new one.
I think that's a crucial thing for bands that have longevity, is like having that kind of silent extra member who happens to be your producer, because a lot of people like to hop around different studios and different producers, and that's why each record like sounds maybe like way different, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of nice when you have someone there who understands what your vision is.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
So how has the reception been?
It's been great. I think the people who know our music totally dig it and seem to really like it. And I'm sure we'll get some new fans from this who haven't heard our previous albums and just hear this one.
Sure.
But so far, I think it's been good. Yeah.
So this is your fourth record through Unique Leader. How has that relationship been?
Unique Leader has been unique to us, I guess. They've obviously been like the household name for underground tech death for a really long time. A lot of our favorite bands were signed to them, so they were kind of our target label when we were looking at like, oh, we should try to get on a label, and when we were really started to push towards that. We'd be like, it'd be cool to be on Unique Leader. They have so many cool bands that we like. And so we've been with them. That was 2009 when we got offered a deal. And then our first album came out in 2010. So it's been 7 years, and it's been really good. They've helped us out a lot. Like, Unique Leader got us some of our big tours in the beginning that kind of helped us launch us onto the national touring circuit, and that was all through Eric at Unique Leader. And since then, he's never stopped like pushing for us and trying to get us opportunities and helping us out. So I really got no complaints there, other than it's not a major label and there's not a ton of money behind it. But there's pros and cons to just taking a whole bunch of money from a label.
Sure.
And working with a big label where they have a huge roster list, and only some bands get priority or not or whatever. So Unique Leaders made us a priority for this whole time, and we actually just started negotiating another 2-album deal with them.
Yeah, well, and with you having that kind of long-term relationship with them, it's almost like you guys are growing together.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Which is, I think, important. There, as you've mentioned, there's the mindset of, hey, let's get on Rise Records. So there's literally so much money at our disposal, so to speak. But when they want to get around to us, or you take a gamble on a smaller label that's maybe a little more focused to what you're trying to do and grow with them. So I think it kind of goes exactly the same with the producer idea. Finding something or someone that is going to grow with you instead of just be like, cool, hey, these guys have pull, and if it doesn't work out, it'll just be a tax write-off. So what's 2018 looking like for Archaic?
We do have some tours planned. I can't announce anything yet, but it looks like just more touring. We just signed with Continental Concerts, a bigger booking agent, and so it's going to look like just more touring and more supporting acts. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We have a new album out, so we're going to be out there supporting that album, and we'll probably start writing new music next year too.
So this is normally where I would talk about gear endorsements and rig setups, but obviously you're not in that situation. And you're actually my first vocalist on the show. So
cool.
We're going to change things up a little bit. Where do you pull influences from for writing lyrics?
I pull influences from, I guess, different thought leaders in different categories of esoteric and occult literature. Also, like the psychedelic pioneers like Terence McKenna and Alan Watts. Those are kind of the branch of the tree that we pick from. That and like some basically just philosophy and the ideas that go along with philosophy. Those spawn a bunch of ideas for lyrics. So we started out like that. Just we wanted to be a band that was brutal, and we wanted our lyrical content and our aesthetic to be not gore or death, or we kind of wanted to do not positive, but music that isn't just generally negative. Sure. About, like, even though we touch on dark concepts, and we always kind of have, like, but more from a philosopher's perspective. If you look up Archaic Practice on YouTube, you'll find this really old video of our first, it's not even really, it's kind of a music video. It's just us jamming and like edited together like a music video. But this is the earliest you could probably find like Archaic stuff. And this song was about death. So it's not like we strayed from like quote unquote dark themes or anything. We have a lot of that, but just from like a higher perspective, all of these different issues, trying to deal with them from like a higher level, I guess. And then I guess I'd have to add into, once we kind of exhausted all those ideas and we had the kind of vibe that we were going for, and we put out Reflections Within Dissonance in 2010. After that, we're like, all right, this is kind of the vibe we want to go. But Chance had an idea to write a concept album. So he went and before we wrote any music, he had written out pretty much this entire story, and with all the songs and all the lyrics kind of like shaping the story. That was Metamorph Ignition. So we went with that, and we liked it a lot. We liked the way that we could draw inspiration for the music from the preconceived story. And so since then we've been doing that, and we're kind of like building this, each album is kind of like a book in a long thing of books. We can basically just keep adding to the story, and the story at this point kind of writes itself. And I don't even know sometimes I don't even know what the next album is going to be. I kind of have an idea until things start pulling together. And Chance, who's not in the band anymore, he still is kind of like the background member, like invisible sixth member too, because me and him have always kind of just been able to jive on ideas. So, and I was never good at writing lyrics, because this is for Archaic, I started out playing guitar, and then we needed a drummer, so I tried playing drums for a while, and I was like, man, and we were listening to this really high caliber music, and I was like, it's going to take a long time for me to get there. We should just search for somebody who's already that good. I ended up just falling into doing vocals, because sometimes in our early days, we'd record a demo, and sometimes we didn't have a vocalist. So I just started doing vocals on the demo, and then I kind of figured out how to play guitar and sing at the same time. And our songs weren't so crazy technical back then, so I could actually do it. And then, so I kind of just switched around different positions in the band until I fell into doing vocals. And I was like, if I stick to this, I can make this, my craft. I can just work on this one thing, and we'll bring in other guys for the other instruments. So I never really planned on being a singer. And I do still play drums a lot. That's kind of my main instrument now.
That's interesting, though, that you've kind of done a little bit of everything. And, I think that shows a sign of character of being for the production instead of being for yourself, which I think is important.
I noticed that I look at music a lot differently than somebody who just plays guitar and just shreds all day long. And which that's cool, but that's just not what I do in the band, so I'm not going to do that all day. I spend most of my time in the world of ideas, and you were talking about, you asked about how I go about writing lyrics, and part of that is I'm always reading some book or multiple books at one time. I'll just kind of go back and forth. Or I'm a huge podcast fan. I listen to podcasts now almost all of my waking hours. I just love it, because that's my craft, is like in the idea realm. It's not in the technical world. So I get a lot of inspiration from there, from ideas that I hear on these different podcasts with these different authors. And that's part of where I get inspiration from.
So let's have a discussion about the Eternal Mile. When was your first tour, and who was the lineup?
My first tour was 2010, and the lineup was Brain Drill was headlining, and then direct support for Brain Drill was Flesh Consumed, and then it was us, and then it was a band called Halo of Gunfire. We were totally green. We didn't know what we were doing at all. And then it was Flesh Consumed, and then Brain Drill, who had kind of developed a name from YouTube, because they were one of the first bands to do the really technical stuff, and I feel like they kind of blew up, went viral because of that in the YouTube days. But they hadn't been touring that much, and so they were kind of trying to come back and see what they could do with it. And I think that was the last tour that they did after that. Interesting.
Well, you definitely threw me for a loop there, because I don't hear Brain Drill mentioned too often. And it's funny, a buddy of mine, who I first heard of Brain Drill from, who's from my area, actually moved out to California, and he was at the show that we played at in Anaheim at was it the Doll Hut?
Yeah. The tiny place.
Yeah. So like it's funny. The person that I heard about Brain Drill from was at that show to see you guys, and he didn't know that I was in Bermuda. So it was just like my mind was completely blown then, and now it's just like, man, that all goes full circle a little bit.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. But for that tour, was that a good, bad, or neutral experience?
For me, it was good, bad, and neutral, I guess, all together.
Okay. So a learning experience more than anything.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Because for me, it'd been like, I don't know, 6 years or so of trying to grow Archaic to the point where we could go on a tour. And it was a huge accomplishment for me, regardless of how many people showed up or whatever. Just the fact that we all got in a van and had a bunch of shows in places we never played before.
Sure.
And went out there and did it. Because you know how it is. Like, you get in the van and like you're off for good, you know, like you're in it. You've got these shows booked, and you know, you're expected to be there and play, and it's a commitment, you know?
Yeah.
So it was good in that way that it was like, all right, we're getting our hands dirty with touring and playing different markets. And at the same time, we really didn't know what we were doing. I guess none of the bands were really like seasoned bands in the touring thing. So we were all kind of like just figuring it out.
Right. To date, how many shows do you think you've done?
Jeez. Well, I know I just finished my 10th tour, so I don't know, probably 400 plus shows.
Favorite markets?
I do like going to the East Coast. I feel like there's like it's the same, you know, it's the same metal family. It's the same like vibe, but it's also different. It's a different vibe.
Very punchy.
Yeah. I've grown up on the West Coast my whole life, and I know how that is, but it's just cool going over there and, you know, like going into those urban jungles and like the cities and playing in places like that. Just those are different kind of people that like choose to live there. Some of the like New York, and yeah, like I like playing there. I don't like being there for very long in these big cities, but I do like going to them and checking them out and playing and then leaving right after the show's done. So not a city person. And then I guess Texas is always a cool one. It just seems like they have metal in their blood down there.
Absolutely.
And something about it, the change of I don't know, mentality and the Southern hospitality is just always cool.
Favorite venues? I
do like Studio 7 in Seattle a lot. It's an awesome venue. It's got that upstairs balcony where you can watch the band from up top, which I like to go up there sometimes and check out the band from the bird's eye view. And then it's also got all those rehearsal rooms, and it's like this big like facility. That's another cool venue.
Have you played Come and Take It Live yet?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a really cool place.
I haven't played there, but that has been a very common like favorite venue spot for a lot of guests.
I could see that. It's really like unlike a lot of venues in that it looks like it's made out of like a log cabin on the inside. Like everything's wood, and so it has really good sound too because the wood absorbs really well. It's not like bouncing everywhere. And I thought that was a really cool venue too.
How about favorite city to have a day off in?
Man, if I could just do another day off, whatever, it worked out on this one tour where we stopped by the Flaming Gorge in Wyoming.
Okay.
And we camped and jumped off some cliffs and like swam and stuff. It was in the summer, so it was super hot, and it was just really like this beautiful lake with these big cliffs, and I just like jumping off cliffs. And I've always been into like extreme sports and wakeboarding and stuff, and so like that stuff's always super fun to me. When I can get the chance to go somewhere and jump off some cliffs, I'll definitely do it.
Sure. It's interesting to hear you say Wyoming, of all places. That's literally one of the most shot states, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, and it sucks, too, because, like, if you're coming from Denver and you're trying to get into Utah, you got to go that way. Because, I mean, most of the time you're not going to chance it through the mountains. You want to go as flat as possible.
Right, yeah.
So welcome to welcome to good old Wyoming, where you're going to have no service for like 5 hours.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing. And then somehow we found this, like, we're looking for bodies of water to dip our sweaty, stinky bodies in. And we found this one place, the Flaming Gorge. And we went there, and there's these badass cliffs, and we were doing flips and drinking beer and having a good time.
Nice.
So I guess that was like just one of the fun days. We don't get a lot of days off on tour, as you know. So when you can get a day off in a nature spot, that's kind of what I like to do.
What would you consider to be the biggest rookie mistake being on tour?
Just leaving your gear at the previous venue, not doing a dummy check and double checking. I know that happened to us one time. In 2011, our second tour, we had the privilege of touring with the Black Dahlia Murder on our first album. And those guys, like, I really feel like showed us the ropes. I still to this day think back of that tour and kind of like feel like I'm still learning things, because those guys, obviously they're doing something right. Right. So I kind of think about it a lot, but I remember one time we left our Roland sample pad at one of the shows, and we didn't even know. And they let us freak out for a while and be like, "Where's our pad? Did you guys see it? We're at the next venue." And then after watching us sufficiently freak out, they were like, "Yeah, we actually grabbed it for you. You guys are dumbasses. You got to make sure you get all your shit."
Man, like that's I always like to hear stuff like that where, bigger bands are looking after the greater good, and it's not like, yeah, this is my headliner run or whatever, Yeah.
Another thing that I would say that they actually taught me too was that at the end of the night, if there's waters laying around, or if there's sodas or energy drinks or beer, make sure that you leave with those too, because those are usually for the show. And if you just leave them there, you're just leaving behind waters. And as you know, like it's nice to have water on when you're on tour, if you have ice chests or something. So like at the end of the night, if there's food and water laying around, pick it up and take it with you. As long as it's not somebody else's, if it's for the show and just people didn't drink it or whatever.
Speaking of taking things, on our last tour, we played in St. Petersburg, and we played at this place called the Local 662, and it was the venue's last show, and there was a band after us. It was our headliner run, and the band after us was like this local hardcore band that draws a bunch of kids, and which was great for us. Sure, bring as many kids in as you can.
Right.
But the band decided, hey, let's have our friends come out and light fireworks off in this place.
In the building?
In the building. And so they're doing that. They're shooting fireworks all over the place, pointing them at their friends like bottle rockets. And it's like starting to go into some of the other bands on the package, like their stuff. And
hitting their gear. And
yeah.
It's like...
and my drummer and the Awaken Providence drummer, they're both just like over there, like what are you
guarding
doing?
it.
Yeah. So it was just and like I had been outside changing, getting cleaned up. And I come back in at the end of the night and I was just like, man, why does this place smell like sulfur? And then I see like there's just chunks of wood and just like garbage and debris everywhere. And it was just like, man, what the hell? And we're getting ready to go. And my bass player looks at me and he was just like, we could really use a table. And I was like, yeah. So we totally snagged one of the tables from from that place.
Yeah, well, it was the last hurrah, right? They're already blowing the place up.
How about top 3 must-have tour items?
Just your toothbrush. I don't know. I like to be kind of minimal on tour. There's not a whole lot I bring other than clothes. For us, our stereo's broken, so we definitely need a Bluetooth speaker for tunes.
Okay.
So yeah, you need something for music, because those 8-hour drives are gonna drive you crazy if you don't. For me, I always like to have a new book, just to at least try to get through some of it.
Sure. Also gets you away from your phone a little bit.
Yeah, or when your phone's charging, then you could pull out a book.
Yep.
But yeah, I like to try to read. I'm like, I have all this time. I should be reading. I do like reading, so that's one thing I always bring is books.
One of the great debate questions: avoid tolls or pay them?
If you avoid the tolls, you're usually going to tack on more time. So it's like this double-edged sword. We just pay them. We just say screw it.
In the summer of 2016, we were out on tour with the Browning, and we had a date in Madison, Wisconsin, and we had a day off. And then after that, it was in Cleveland, Ohio. And we took, I think it's I-80. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was that. From Madison to Cleveland, which isn't that far. I mean, it's a drive, but it's not that far. We paid almost $100 in tolls. And if we just would have like dipped south in Chicago and went into Indiana and like swooped down, went through Fort Wayne, and then made our way back up, we probably only would have paid like $20. And so like ever since then, it's been like, cool, no tolls, right?
Yeah, you double checking before you hit the road. You're like, all right, let's check this out.
Well, and the good thing now too is that it seems like across the board now, because Apple was kind of late to the game with it, but every GPS now has the option to avoid tolls.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
But yeah, it's definitely it's a catch-22 for sure, because it's like you're avoiding tolls, but you're avoiding tolls for a completely different reason. So. Yeah.
I wonder what it would be like to tour without GPS, like with maps.
Like the back in the day, how they used to do it. That would be nuts.
Before smartphones.
Yeah. As you know, there's plenty of misconceptions about being in a touring band, and it's always over glamorized. What's been some of the wilder things you've been asked or told about being on the road?
Here's the fun one. When you tell them, "Oh, you guys, how you doing? You making money?" "Oh yeah, we're get paid here and there a little bit, Like, "Oh yeah, like how much?" And then, say it's somebody close to you, or you're like, you don't mind telling them. Yeah. And then they go, "For each person, right?" And you're like, "No, that's for the whole band." That one always. And then the other one is like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure there's tons of groupies," or something like that. And as well as I do, that's not the case, especially with this type of music.
Oh yeah. If by groupies you mean sweaty dudes.
Yes, there are a ton of groupies, if that's what you mean. It's all groupies then.
So to further that, let's go over some of the less glamorous moments in your career. Any horror stories from the stage?
Yeah, there's one time that I'd probably block most of this out of my memory at this point, because I just know that we were on tour with Cannibal Corpse, Exhumed, and Abysmal Dawn in 2012. And there was just this time where I totally just froze. I was trying to think of the bands we were on tour with, and I couldn't think of who we were on tour with. And when I tried to say their name, it came out like like I don't know. I was just like, okay. I just didn't know what to do, and then we just like started the song, and it was. I remember it was just like, oh God, like did that really just happen? And it's like, it was one of those crowd. I think what made it worse, it was one of those crowds where like we were touring with Cannibal Corpse, so they have their audience, and we're like a no-name band, and we were just opening up, playing first, and there were no openers, so it was like a cold crowd, and so we kind of had to come out and try to get everything going. And it was one of those nights where people were just kind of standing with their arms crossed and like, all right, let's see what you guys, who are you? What are you doing? And so, I don't know, it was just a weird off night. So that was one of them, I guess. I'm sure there's more, but
I have a story that's kind of similar to that, and it doesn't involve me, but it's a story that I've heard that's been passed around from several people that I know. Okay. So apparently there was this tour package that was going on, and it was this thing where, like you get those huge bands, and it's like maybe late spring, early summer, and you're hitting a lot of like those festivals, and you try to plan your tours around the festivals.
Yeah.
So this band, this tour package was on the road, and they found themselves at like their first festival date, and it was like 2.5 weeks in, and one of the openers for the package was standing on the stage and was, just watching side stage, checking out bands, and their headliners came through, and like they're pushing gear and all that kind of stuff, and they're handing it off to this opener for their package. Like, hey, so yeah, we're pretty basic setup. Here's our stage plot, this and that. And they look at him and they're like, we've been on tour together for 2.5 weeks, and you think we're stagehands? Talk about the most awkward shit ever.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey man, how you doing? Yeah, here's our stage plot. Should be pretty easy to stage it. It's like, are you serious? Is this real life? Like, it's one thing to like have a hard time remembering people's names on tour, but you remember faces.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know who, like for 2 weeks. Like,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I guess some people just have like that tunnel vision, can't see outside of their own eyeballs.
How about the worst promoter or overall situation you've had to deal with?
This one probably takes the cake. Other than like paying or getting paid $7, I think that was we were like, what's our record at the least amount we've gotten paid? In our first tour, we got $9 for our, guarantee or whatever. And then I think sometime after that, we beat it with the $7 record. So, but those were like, the shows still were, decent. We just didn't get paid a lot. This last tour we did with Alter Beast and Inanimate Existence was a headliner tour. And one of the tour dates was the Louisville Death Fest, or Louisville Death Fest. Did you hear about it? Yeah, I'm sure you did. So it's a 2-day fest, Friday and Saturday, and we were playing Saturday, and I think we might have got word about it like that night that something was going on, but we showed up the next day and we had to hear the whole story, like, this is what's going down. And it was Malcolm Pugh from he runs the Artisan Era, and his wife, and they were kind of giving us the lowdown when we got there, and it was like the promoter the night before disappeared. Nobody knows where he went, and he like left his car in the parking lot, and like didn't pay a bunch of bands that night and just disappeared. And then the next morning, the venue still hadn't been paid for the day so the second day could go on. And I think one of the more local to the area bands who might have known who this guy is went to his house, like got him for however way to pay for the venue. The guy still didn't show his face, but they got like $500 out of him so they could pay for the venue for the day. And then the rest of the day was all volunteer people helping out just to try to make the show happen. Then there was like nobody really at the doors, so people were just like walking in. So the promoter was nowhere to be seen. There's people trying to keep the show from not just falling apart. And there's bands that traveled from a bunch of different places. There's attendees that came all the way from Canada, for like bands on the second day. So they're like, we're just glad that it's happening. So we were supposed to like headline or play like at first it was like 10:20. We're like supposed to play at 10:20, and then it gets scooted back to like 11:40, and then it's like 12:30, and then there's this band. I won't name their names, but they wanted to make sure that they played at this certain time. This band wasn't on tour. I don't know when they ever played. It was like an older band that, they felt like they had some seniority to just like get their way. And they wanted to play an hour-long set. Everybody else was playing like half an hour-long sets, but they wanted to play an hour-long set. It was like not the promoter like dealing with this band. So there's all this like miscommunication and people getting angry about the set times getting pushed back. And then this band wanted to play like where basically at the time slot we were supposed to play. And then they added some bands after that, like our tour package, Alter Beast, Inanimate Existence, kind of put them later so we could all play together. And we were sharing drum kits too. And this band takes forever. These older guys, they take forever to just set up. I think I counted like at least 45 minutes just to start getting to the first song. And then they played for like another like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And so we're all shortening our sets and trying to hustle and help bands off. There's nobody running the show. And this band took up this whole long time. And then they took the headliner that didn't get to play from the last night and they put them in the lineup too. So we end up playing at close to 3 a.m.
Oh my
and luckily
God.
luckily the bar didn't close till 4, and there were like people were still hanging out. Like there were bands still going on, and the diehard people were still toughing it out. And so after all of that, another rookie thing is too, this band that took forever that wanted to play, the drummer was taking his cymbals off on the stage.
Oh my God. Breaking down hardware. Don't do it. Do it off stage.
Yeah, local bands just take the drums all off the stage and then take your cymbals off.
Yeah.
It saves so much time.
Yeah.
So anyways, everybody was all kind of frustrated with that, but we did so good on merch sales that I was just like, fine. I was happy that the show went on. And people stuck around all the way till almost 3 o'clock when we played. We played and got it over with, but it was just this super long day of it was just a nightmare, the whole thing. So that was our recent one.
Lastly, what's one of the most random things to happen at a show?
Okay, this just popped in my head. Somebody handed me chicken while on stage. Like a chicken strip or something. And I thought at first, because of the way the lights were on the lighting in the club because we were playing, it was while we were playing, and I thought he was handing me like this big nug of weed, but because it looked like that, but I grabbed it and I was like, what is this? I was like, oh, it's chicken. So I took a few bites and then I threw it, but that was something that was pretty funny.
That's perfect.
That was the first time I've ate chicken while performing.
And will it be the last time?
Who knows? Maybe it'll become a thing. Hopefully, if anybody comes out to see us, they can bring some chicken. I will eat it on stage.
So, so here we go, listeners. Here's a call to action. Go to an Archaic show and bring chicken strips.
And then wait till we play, and then just, give them to us.
So I'm curious to hear what advice you'd have for a few groups of people. And for starters, let's start with local bands.
See, for local bands, I've heard this a lot too, from like maybe more authoritative people in the industry, is that you should build up your local scene and make sure you can pull people out to your show and that you build fans locally before you try to book that DIY tour and go to a bunch of cities that you've never played in before. Unless you're one of those few and far between that have just like maybe internet popularity, so you're popular wherever, I'd say focus on your local market. And so if you do that, you'll get on the better shows, better touring shows when they come around. The promoters will want to go to your band because they know that you've been working on creating fans in your area. So you're going to get better shows that way, and you're going to get recognized better that way if you work on that, promoting your shows and actually going out and going to shows. What we did back in the day, because we had to do the sell the tickets thing, the pay to play kind of thing, before we started touring too. We did a lot of that, and we eventually got cool with the promoters because they knew that we sold our tickets. And a lot of times it's like, okay, a band doesn't know, I don't have 50 friends in the area that I know that all like metal or whatever. So how am I going to get all that people? What we did is we went to shows in the area wherever we're playing. Southern California was our demographic at first. That's where we started out. And we'd go to all the shows, and not only would we get to go to a cool show, which we liked doing, but we would sell tickets while we're there. And we would make a lot of new friends by just going up, hey, did you guys know that Behemoth is playing next month, or whatever band? We have pre-sale tickets, and they're like $2 or $5 cheaper from me, and get their number and sell those people tickets and talk to people at shows before you play. And you're going to have an easier time selling tickets and gaining fans because those people are going to meet you and they're going to be like, oh, I know your band, I'll come out to see it. And instead of just like inviting people on Facebook, like going actually out there and doing footwork, I think is like the easiest way to actually make it in the real world. I don't think any of our connections came from, just digitally. We got signed to Unique Leader from playing a show that we had to sell tickets for, that we were the tiniest name on the flyer at the very, very bottom. And we met Obi Flett, who is the vocalist for Inherent Disease. He was running the Unique Leader merch, or they had a label booth there where they're selling all Unique Leader stuff, CDs, and we talked to him. He came out and saw the band. He knew Mike Hamilton from Deeds of Flesh, who is Eric from Deeds of Flesh and Unique Leader's friend, or they were in a band. And we built that bridge from playing a show and from talking to people, and that's eventually how we got signed. And then if we weren't get signed, we wouldn't have got these good tours and kind of got pushed out there into that world. So I think that people should really try to go out and talk to people. And if you're not good at talking to people, do it anyways and get good at it, because not everybody's born that way. That's part of the requirement for being like a successful musician, I think, is being able to get outside your comfort zone and make connections and network. So that'd be just a big thing I would say for local bands, is really try to do that kind of stuff and not expect things. Because one thing that local bands should remember is that, and that everybody should remember, is that hope is not a strategy. And I kind of learned the hard way with that too, because throughout all these years, there's maybe time where I was just hoping something would happen. Whereas I learned later on that it's kind of a two-way road. You kind of have to meet it in the middle. You kind of have to intend to go out there and do something and to make something happen rather than hope. So hope isn't a strategy. That would be my takeaway.
How about promoters?
I would say is, like, let's promote the show. Let's do some promotion. Like, I've seen too many times what looks like just a show that was booked between a promoter and a booking agent. Say they're our booking agent on a tour, and we show up and we can tell that nobody knows that there's a show going on, and maybe the only thing that happened was maybe a Facebook event page was made, and then an agreement was made between the booker and the promoter to have the show. But beyond that, the promoter, it doesn't seem like, did anything. And that happens like a lot, sadly. I think that it's this thing where the promoter is kind of hoping that the band will do all the work, or the band is big enough to draw in a bunch of people to where everything works out. Or that the locals sold enough tickets and will bring enough people, but maybe the locals just paid for their tickets. And even though the promoter got all the paperwork, all the books are clear, nobody's at the show and nobody knows it happened because there's no real promotion. So just promote. Some promoters are great at it, and I always make sure that I let them know, like, hey man, you actually promoted this. I can obviously tell, and we appreciate that.
Lastly, what advice would you give to bands hitting the road for the first time?
Just have fun, because you're probably not going to make a lot of money or much money at all. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
To further that point a little bit, I want to bring up something from Adam's episode. The fact that you guys did a tour out of his car is still insane to me.
I mean, I kind of take pride in the fact that we've been dealt with so many, like, roadblocks, no pun intended, and still been able to, we've never dropped a tour. We've never turned down a good opportunity. So, like that tour, our transmission went out on the first day, on the first mountain we started climbing. It just broke, and then we did an entire tour in a Toyota 4Runner, just like sandwiched in the back, like sleeping in the driver's seats, and but we made it happen. And like Psychroptic was headlining that tour, and they were cool enough to bring around our trailer for the whole tour and tow that behind their van, and we were also sharing gear with them, so it kind of worked out with them too. But it seems like it's just crazy how everybody comes together to help you when you need help.
Yeah, for sure.
Stuff like that, it's happened multiple times where I'm just like, wow, we're really fortunate for like any of this to be happening.
Kind of restores your faith in humanity a little bit.
Totally.
Which this day and age is very hard to make that statement.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's just because we're not in those fucked situations as much, because for some reason it always works out when that happens. And maybe we just forget that is there, and that when shit does go down, it's in our nature to be helpful or whatever. I don't know. But it does restore your faith in humanity a bit.
So before we go, let's do a quick plug for Archaic. Where can people check you guys out?
You can check us out at our Facebook, facebook.com/Archaic Band, Instagram, and then you can get our new album on wherever you buy music, pretty much. Nemethia, it's on Unique Leader Records. It just came out a couple months ago. So shouldn't be too hard to find. Bandcamp, you can also get it there.
Jared, thank you so much for coming on the show. Best of luck moving forward with Archaic, and hopefully our paths cross again soon.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
That concludes this episode. I'd like to thank Jared for being on the show. Check out Archaic on social media and wherever music is sold. Once again, thank you so much for supporting the show for these last 13 weeks. Really looking forward to 2018. I've been Noah Sias, and as always, thank you for listening.